Good afternoon, folks. I wanted to share with you today a new system I have developed. The idea came out of something I saw on the forums. Somebody was looking for a way to have a bunch of different spreadsheets sent out, and they were doing a weekly assessment, and then she wanted to pull all that data into one place. And that could be done with import range, but I developed a system and I applied it to an education problem of having teachers distribute to their students a set of reading logs, a individual spreadsheet for each student to track what they're reading each week. Let's take a look at how the system is set up. So first of all, we have a report template. Let's start here. In this case, I've developed this, and this would be a reading list for, let's say, 10-year-olds. So I just found a list of books you might be reading, 10-year-olds might be reading. And then what I've done is built a weekly Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday set of sheets here. Now, this is a formula that puts in the date of the Monday prior, or the Monday of the week in which we are. So the students never have to change these dates. This is going to be the information for the Monday, October 21st. The student name, I just have a name in here, but when we run our scripts, the student name is put in here. If you choose a book title, or the student chooses a book title, say they're reading The Giver, the author automatically populates because we're using a VLOOKUP here. The teacher would put in on this list of books that they distribute to the students what are the possible books they want the kids to read. And then what the kids fill out essentially is what chapter they're on, how many pages they read, how much time, and a brief summary. And of course, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are all equal, except Monday calculates the Monday of the week we're in for today's date, and then this automatically adds one day to that. So the days are automatically calculated for the students. And then there's a weekly summary where this data with this query, you can see it's a stacked query, pulls in the data from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you can see I put The Giver on Monday, and then if I went ahead and put in, the student was reading chapter 1, they read 14 pages, it took them 15 minutes, and they might have put in a summary. But notice on my summary now, I've collected that data. And then there's another piece here that calculates how many, this total amount. So if we were to look at how many pages, that's just a summary of what that student has done. So that's the student sheet. When this is distributed, most likely the teacher is going to fill this out, and then on this template, notice this is just the template. And by the way, I would remove all the data from the template so that you're distributing a blank template. And then I would say that the teacher, when they distribute this, would probably be hiding this sheet. So when a student gets a sheet, they won't need to see that book list. They may or may not need to see the weekly summary. The teacher is going to be using that. That's kind of it for the student sheet. Notice, again, going over a couple things. Nice formula here to automatically calculate the date. Oh, and by the way, this is also hidden so that this is all that the student looks at is the day. They choose a book title. It automatically populates an author. This is actually a VLOOKUP here. The student then fills out what chapter they're on, pages, time spent, and so forth. And then we're collecting that data. So that's the student sheet. Then back here on the teacher sheet, we basically have a roster of students. I have these 4 students, they have email addresses, and then when we run one of the scripts, this sheet is automatically created for each one of these students, for Rod Stewart, for Tom Farnham, and so forth. And then the script automatically creates that. Back here on the setup, it's an important feature here that we have the template ID, and that is the ID of this file right here. We are grabbing at that ID and putting it in here, and then there's a folder in my Google Drive where all of this stuff lives, and when these new files get created, they live there. Let's take a look at first the script that is set up. By the way, you can see we do have some scripts. We have a create sheet script, archive previous weekly summary script, get new weekly summaries, and clear student sheets. We'll go through all of these. The extensions, under the extension menu, we open up app script. Let's take a look at what these scripts look like. So first of all, we have this on open script. That's what basically generates this so that we have these particular scripts that we run. Let's take a look first at the create sheet script, excuse me. So this function is going to get the setup sheet and get the roster sheet. So let's take a look at that. Here's the setup sheet, we talked about what's in there, and here's the roster sheet with these names and email addresses. So we're going to get those things, and we're going to get the template ID from A2 on the template sheet. That is being defined here. The template sheet ID is the setup sheet A2. And then we're getting the folder ID from the setup sheet B2. And then the folder itself is, we're going to open that folder with that folder ID. And then the template sheet, we are going to open that up using this template ID that we are storing in the sheet. So if you were to make a copy of this, you would have to replace, on the setup tab, you'd have to replace your template ID and your folder ID. And then we run through what this does for the roster, and then we collect the roster data. So we have this roster data, which is basically these three columns. We collect that, and what we're saying in here is the existing, the name is column, the first column. When you're collecting the data, you're using row 0 is the name, row 1 is, well, you know, the in the brackets, that identifies the column actually. Row of the data that's being worked with. Email is row column 1, and the row column 2 is the URL. So if there's no name, no email, and there is an existing URL, then you return. You do not do anything. But if that's not met, then you make a new sheet. You take the template sheet, make a copy, give it a name with that name and a document, and you move it into the folder. And then you get the ID of that, and then in the new sheet URL, you open that sheet, and we're going to open that new sheet ID. We're going to open by ID, that new sheet ID. We're collecting the new sheet URL because we're going to paste it back into the spreadsheet. Then we get Monday of the newly created sheet, and in there we place the name of the student in B2 of the Monday sheet. Let's take a look here, and we can see we've hidden that, but B2 of the Monday sheet, and then that is equal to B2. So we just place the name with the script into B2, and then if we take a look at all the other sheets, you'll see that they're just equal to Monday B2. So we use that as a way to, I'll go ahead and rehide these, as a way to just put the name in one place, and then it shows up. And the reason we do that is we want this student name to show up in each row of this column here on our summary. And then we get the we make that student the editor with that email of that new sheet that they get, and then we set the value of the URL. So that's the script. That's our create and share sheet script. And when we run that, we will actually get a new spreadsheet. If we come back and look at my Drive folder, we would see what's in in that Drive folder. If I were to remove, for instance, this one, I'll go ahead and remove that and run the script. Well, let me do this first. Let me undo that. If I run the create sheet script, it's just going to run and quit because there's no data in any of these cells here, and these cells already have data. Now, if I remove that spreadsheet from here, we're going to run that script, and you'll see it's going to create a new sheet for that student, and this is a brand new spreadsheet for Pam Dodds. You can see what it looks like. My names are hidden, but it says Pam Dodds. Now, what we're doing then to collect the data, the idea behind this is that each student has their own sheet. We've talked about how we create those. And then what we want to do is collect the summary of each student. So what this script does, and this is the get the weekly summary script, what this does is goes out, it first of all clears the data from the previous week. So that's the reason we put the archive, the previous weekly summary data, script above that, because we want to do that before we collect the new summary. But what you can see here is that this would be, and in this case, in this particular week, we don't have any data from any of the 4 students, except the one student that had some data on his sheet. And if I were to run this again, I believe, let's check that. Well, let's do this. Let's go back to my roster. Let's open the Tom Farnham sheet. Let's see what's actually on here. And we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the weekly summary. So the Tom Farnham sheet is actually empty. So watch what happens here. If I come back to my reading master sheet, I'll go ahead and put that away and take a look at the summary. We see we have some data here from Tom Farnham. Let's run the, and I've already run this. Let me double check that, but let's make sure that Tom Farnham is in my summary archive, and we can see, in that first week not, but then down here we have collected data again, and we can see this data from Tom Farnham. So I've already archived this data, so I know that I could overwrite it. So we'll go ahead and get the new weekly summaries. Now in this case, I believe it's all going to be empty. Notice the script blanks out the sheet, and then it pulls in the data from all 4 sheets, but there's no data on the sheet. So let's go ahead and change that. Let's go back here and let's open up any one of these sheets. I'll just open up Rod Stewart and we'll see his sheet here. Let's choose a book. Let's say it's The Adventures of Huck Finn. That sheet looks like it needs to be fixed up. Let's try a different sheet. It looks like that's an older sheet. We'll do this sheet and check Pam Dodd. So if I choose that, notice it automatically populates my author. And Pam might have been reading chapter 1. She read 12 pages and it took her, 15 minutes, as a 10-year-old, and they would write a brief summary. But let's go ahead and see. We can see we pulled that data into our weekly summary. So let's go ahead and come back to the master sheet. Let's take a look at summary. Notice it's all blank. Let's get the weekly summaries, and it should blank that sheet out. It should delete all the data that's on this sheet, taking a moment to run. Sometimes scripts are really fast and sometimes they take a minute. And you can see finally that script finished, and you can see I've pulled in data for Rod Stewart and I pulled in data for Pam Dodds. And you can see we didn't put any data in there. Let's go back to the Rod Stewart, and we need to fix up. Yeah, I see what needs to be happening here on this author. For some reason, this is missing from Rod Stewart. I'll fix that real quickly. We will then come here. We'll grab that and do that. So now notice the Mark Twain fits in there. Let's go ahead and put in chapter 3. He read 41 pages in 55 minutes. Let's go ahead now and come back to my master sheet, and let's go ahead and run my new weekly summaries again. It blanks out the sheet, it goes through each one of the sheets, and notice that data instantly pops in now to my teacher sheet. I can actually see the weekly summary at any point in time by running this script of how all my students are doing. That's the weekly summary, and again, let's take a look at that script real quickly. This would be the get summary. So what this is doing is, again, going to the roster sheet and the summary sheet. We're getting the last row of the summary sheet, and we are finding all the data on the summary sheet, and we're clearing the contents. Not all the contents, but we don't want to clear everything, but we wanted to clear everything from row 2 over to column H, and then we didn't want to clear this because this is some other calculation. So we're going over to row 8, column 8, clearing the content. Then we're getting the roster sheet URLs, and we're going out to each URL. For each URL, we're opening it up. We're grabbing the data from A2 to H21. That's the summary. So let's take a look at that. In this weekly summary, from A2 to H21, we're grabbing that data from each sheet, and then we're grabbing all that, and then down here, we're pasting that data into the summary sheet of the master sheet. So that's how we're pulling in that data. So now that we have pulled in the data for this week, the week of October 21st, we've pulled in the summary data for each one of our sheets. Then what we want to do is, because notice, when I run the summary data, when I run this get new weekly summaries, it actually deletes all this data. So we want to archive that data onto here. I want to make sure I have all that data, and notice, so let's go ahead. Before I were to actually delete this data, I need to archive the previous week. And if we take a look at that, it is finished. We take a look, and now you'll see down here, here's that Rod Stewart, and here's this Huckleberry Finn. So now I have that data, and notice what I'm doing with that data up here is I'm summarizing the number of pages that each one of these students right here have read. And that is happening on the summary archive. So looking again here on this, we first archive the data, then we can get new weekly summaries. And when we do that and get the new weekly summaries, after we've archived the data, then it blanks this out and we start again with the next week. The teacher could run this particular get new weekly summaries any time during the week to sort of track how the students are doing. But what would probably happen is, let's say at the end of the week, Sunday night, the teacher's going to come in, she's going to archive, she's going to first of all get the new weekly summaries for that week, and then she's going to archive the previous weekly summaries so that we make sure we have this backed up to here. And then there is a third script down here. We want to clear the student sheets because we want these student sheets. We've already collected the data for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, October 21st. Well, when we switch over to the next week of the following week, this date's going to automatically change. We're going to want this. We're going to want this probably on Saturday night. We're going to want this data to be cleared. So watch what happens from the master sheet when I clear the student sheets. We come over here and we should see this data get cleared out, and we should see the Rod Stewart data get cleared out as well. Let's see if that script is running. Okay, it ran and it's all been cleared. And notice that data is gone from Pam Dodds and Rod Stewart. So the data has been cleared. The sheets are ready to move on to the next week. Let's take a look at that script and see what that looks like. In this last segment, we had looked at how we can clear the student sheets by running the clear student sheets. Again, we, as a teacher, we'd want to figure out the times to do this, where we are going to clear our student sheets probably on Saturday night. Let's take a look at the script here and see how we might automatically do this. We've gone through all these scripts up here to this clear student sheet script. What this is doing again is getting the roster, getting those URLs, opening the URLs, getting the sheet names Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and clearing the range for each one of those sheet names. You're clearing the range C2 to H5 and getting rid of the content that's in those particular ranges so that the student sheets are clear. Now, what you could do with this script is go ahead and set this script up on a trigger. And I won't run through this, but in part of the setup for a teacher, you would go ahead and, well, we can just do this. We would want to run the Clear Weekly Sheets script, and we would do that on a time driven, and we would say we want to do that on a week timer, and every Saturday at midnight, we would clear the sheets. And that would be sure that when the new week starts on Sunday, the data that we've collected is not going to be it's going to be gone. I'll go ahead and cancel it. I don't want to set that up right now, but that's what I would do with my master sheet. I would want to clear the student sheets at a certain time, and then I would also want to probably set up on a trigger to pull in the weekly summaries and archive. I would set all this up automatically, but you could always run, for instance, during the middle of the week, you could always run the get new weekly summaries and just track. That would be this weekly summary. You could track how are my students doing this week, and then of course the summary archive is basically all their data. Well, let's take a look at what we've done here with some charts. So here's my weekly summary, and here we go. We've got Rod Stewart and Pam Dodds on my weekly chart. Pam's read 12 pages, 15 minutes, and if we come back here and look at the summary, we can see we have the weekly information for Pam is, yes, 12 minutes, 12 pages, 15 minutes, but this is her cumulative. We would take a look at our cumulative chart and see that Pam Dodds has 392, 425, and I can see all that information. So we're making this information easily accessible to the teacher to look at all of the different data that they're collecting, all from one master sheet, the reading log master sheet, individual sheets built off of these individual templates that we use a script to push out to each student and make them the owner so they can become responsible to track their reading. Now, one last thing here, in case you want to look at a student by person, I can choose Pam Dodds and I can see the latest chapter that she's read is chapter 1. This is her information. If I looked at Rod Stewart, here's the Adventures of Huck Finn. The last chapter that he's read is chapter 3, page 41, starting on page 41. So that would be looking at the cumulative data of that particular student. Well, actually, this is looking, let's take a look at that. It's actually a query, and it's reading the summary data, this data, the weekly data, not the summary archive. The summary archive data we can look at by checking out this. The student, what we can look at here is what's the last chapter that a student might have read, and in this data. This is not showing you the full amount because students don't have more data. Let's go ahead and well, we've already cleared this data off. So the weekly summaries are already been cleared. But again, just wanted to share this with you, a system. I wanted to share largely that this is a concept system. This template could be any data you would like to collect. If it's weekly data you want to collect from students, it might be a book log, it might be a science log, it might be any kind of data you want. But you could build a system like this with basically with these 4 fairly simple scripts, and then build a master sheet, have your setup scripts that you can run, and be able to push out a sheet, make it the students responsible for collecting their own data, but you're getting that data fed back to you in a way that you can instantly analyze without having to do any other work.